She was 8 months pregnant when someone tied her hands behind her back, tied her feet together, and pushed her face first into a shallow lagoon. She was found exactly that way 10,000 years later, still bound, still face down, preserved in the dried sediment of what used to be the edge of the water. Cambridge researchers excavating the site in Kenya counted 26 other bodies around her. Men, children, all dead, some with stone arrowheads still lodged inside their skulls after 100 centuries. Nobody had buried them. Nobody had come back. And what the forensic evidence written into those bones reveals about how ancient humans actually died is darker, more specific, and more human than anything you've been taught to imagine. Forget the statistics. Forget the averages. What archaeology has uncovered in the last 30 years is not a number. It's individual people, frozen in the moment of their deaths, with enough forensic detail preserved that scientists can reconstruct not just how they died, but how long it took. And some of these deaths took a very long time. Picture a man, any camp, 50,000 years ago. He cuts his foot on a flint edge during a hunt, cleans it with water, keeps moving because stopping isn't an option. The wound closes on the surface. What he cannot see is what's happening underneath. 4 days later, the skin around it is hot to the touch. 6 days in, he has a fever he cannot explain and cannot name. By the second week, his family knows something is wrong, but has no framework to understand what or why. There is no intervention available, no medicine that reaches the bloodstream. No way to stop what has already started. Sepsis, infections spreading through the blood, was almost certainly one of the most common killers in prehistoric life. It left no mark on bone. It generated no fossil record. It simply erased people and left their families with nothing to bury that explained anything. But some deaths did leave marks, and the marks are extraordinary. Paleopathologists, scientists who read disease and trauma from ancient bone, have found things in prehistoric skeletons that are almost unbearable to sit with once you understand what you're looking at. Osteomyelitis, bone infections so severe it physically deforms the limb over months, twisting and warping the structure into something unrecognizable, visible thousands of years later in exact preserved detail. That deformity is not just a medical finding. It is a record of a human being who lived with that level of pain for an extended period, still walking, still contributing, still surviving, because the alternative was to stop, and stopping meant dying faster. The bone remembers the suffering in a way the person never could have articulated. And then there are the ones who didn't die of disease at all. In 1991, 2 hikers in the Italian Alps stumbled on what they assumed was a modern mountaineering accident. A body, frozen in ice, partially exposed by a melting glacier. It was not a modern accident. It was a 5,300-year-old man, preserved so completely that his last meal was still identifiable in his stomach. Red deer, wild grains, berries, eaten less than an hour before he died. Researchers named him Otzi, and what CT scans revealed in 2001 transformed him from a curiosity into the oldest murder case in human history. A flint arrowhead, smaller than a coin, was lodged beneath his left shoulder blade. It had severed his subclavian artery. He bled out in minutes. The arrow had come from behind, from roughly 30 meters away, far enough that the physics of impact kept the head embedded rather than passing through. His killer had then approached the body and removed the wooden shaft, leaving only the arrowhead behind. Forensic investigators studying the case confirmed what this means. Someone deliberately destroyed the evidence. Otzi had also fought in the days before his death. A deep defensive wound across his right hand showed he had grabbed a blade, the way a person grabs a blade when someone is trying to drive it into them. He had survived that fight. He had eaten well immediately before his death. He was relaxed. He did not see the arrow coming. He was hunted, tracked through the mountains by someone who knew where he was going, and killed with the cold precision of a premeditated act that a modern detective studying the forensic profile would have no trouble recognizing. But Ötzi died alone. What happened at Nataruk was something else entirely. The 27 bodies found at the Kenyan site, the pregnant woman, the men with arrowheads still embedded in bone, the children, were not buried, not one of them. They were left exactly where they fell, some face down in the shallows of the lagoon, and the sediment quietly rose around them over 10 millennia. Researchers from Cambridge identified the cause of death in 10 of the best-preserved skeletons with forensic certainty. Blunt force trauma to skulls so severe the bone had caved inward, arrow wounds to the neck. One man struck twice from different angles, the second blow delivered after he was already down. One individual had an obsidian blade fragment inside his skull, obsidian that can be flaked to a cutting edge finer than modern surgical steel. But it was not what killed him. What killed him was a separate strike that destroyed the entire left side of his face. The obsidian blade was still there after 10,000 years, still inside the bone, still sharp enough, researchers noted, to cut. Cambridge's Dr. Marta Mirazon-Lar, who led the Nataruk excavation, described it as the clearest evidence of prehistoric warfare ever documented. Not a ritual, not an accident, a systematic attack by one group on another, carried out with weapons, at range, on men, women, and children, for reasons that almost certainly came down to the lagoon itself, the water, the fish, the fertile ground. The oldest war in the human record was fought over resources. Every war since has been fought over the same thing dressed in different language. Here is what all of this means, taken together. The ancient world did not kill people abstractly. It killed them specifically, with infected wounds that took weeks to finish what they started, with violence forensically indistinguishable from modern homicide, with the slow destruction of bone from the inside over months of pain that the person continued to live through because humans continue. That is what we do. We continue. The woman at Nataruk, Ötzi on his mountain, the man whose twisted femur records a year of agony nobody will ever fully know. They were not primitive. They were not simple. They were people inside individual lives, facing individual deaths, in a world that offered them nothing between their own bodies and everything that wanted to end them. That they survived long enough to become our ancestors is not a given. It is a miracle that compounds across 50,000 years. And every time a doctor hands you an antibiotic, every time a surgeon closes a wound, every time a forensic investigator names a cause of death, they are finishing something those people started. The long, brutal, unbroken work of refusing to disappear.